So for tonight, we have our special guest, the badass kicking new atheist. And if you don't follow him already, make sure that you do. He's got quite a following online and well worth your time during the day. Thank you all for listening in.
Hey guys, can you hear me? Is this clear?
Oh, yeah, loud and clear.
Well, great. I appreciate you having me on.
Clear is not always a problem, but with everyone we have that issue. Yeah, but with you, loud, you don't have to ask. Even if it's not clear, you're always loud.
I resemble that remark.
It's so good to have you on here tonight. For those that are just joining us tonight, we have the badass kicking new atheist, which we affectionately know him as BA. He posts quite often in Twitter and has a lot to say. But if you don't follow him already, please give him a follow and definitely get some of that. I don't know if I want to call it like spark joy moments, but just real talk, I guess, in your life. But I've been following BA's account for several months now, and I've just really loved like a lot of the banter on there, the jokes, but also some of the things he's saying is like, it's got a message in there. So don't always just take it like, oh, that's what it is. But anyhow, I won't chit chat too much. Infidel, do you want to say a little bit about BA as well?
No, I think you said it pretty well, and I think what the gist of your message was enjoy the snark, but know that there's a lot more there because I think that word does sum up BA in a lot of ways. He can be very snarky, but I will say this, and I'm going to start off by being kind. I'm only going to do it for a second, and then I'll be me for the rest of the space. I've known since my very beginning on Twitter, and like Zaylen was saying, he can come off as a little rough around the edges, but so can I. And I know that, and it's because we're all different and the way we communicate. I genuinely, however, do trust his intent, where his metaphorical heart is at. And he's got a good message. He brings a lot to the table in areas that I definitely lack in, especially when it comes to the psychological part of things. So I really do value his word. I've done, let's say one or two. I've at least done one. Yeah, one video podcast with him, and genuinely consider him a friend. That being said, he's got horrible taste in vegetables, and I will introduce BA. BA, give us a little bit about your background. What made you the badass kicking new atheist?
Well, guys, I appreciate the kind words with the qualifiers that have to be put in there because it's me, I guess. I'm really excited about talking today. I shaved for this and everything, so I think I mentioned to you guys that I'll probably be sitting on the porcelain throne as we speak. I think better on the toilet, so please excuse any sounds you might hear there. So
I hope those aren't the hands you're wiping with.
no. I'm well versed in many other. If you haven't tried a bidet, you don't know what you're missing. So all right, let's just jump in a little bit. So I've been on Twitter for several years. Started out with a totally different moniker. It was more along the lines of gaming. Started engaging in conversation, and then I met the religious people that are on Twitter, and so they started calling me names and all kinds of mean stuff, and calling me atheist and this, that, and the other, telling me I'm going to hell. So, I held my ground. I understood where I am and in my understanding of the world. And as things progressed, I even got called a bad atheist by other atheists because of the way I can be snarky. I can take that idea and kind of stick it where the sun don't shine if it sucks. Just via my experience and the way I present things, I think sometimes. So I changed it to be a little more anonymous because it was getting more attention, and I want to protect the people I care about. So not so much myself, but it's others that could be targeted and things of that nature. So it became Atheist Bad, but my screen name was Bad Atheist, and that's where the BA originated at. That's where that came from originally. And then there was some heated debates and discussions, and you're not supposed to take Twitter personal, but I mean, I had some big mob attacks after I presented some stuff. I mean, it's simple stuff, memes and things of that nature. And so I put it out there that, hey, I'm going to change it up a little bit, and requested people to provide input. And that's where this long ass bullshit name came from. To actually label me more accurately, if you're going to look to me to identify myself, theological non-cognitivist, kind of a humanist, and an atheist. I don't think the word God is even coherently defined. I haven't heard a religious person give me one, so it's not really a debate to me. You're pulling emotion out of your ass and trying to make it real. So that's kind of where I am at with it. My history, grew up on a farm and learned how to work hard. Was fortunate, even though I never met my biological father. Adoption, even though he was a prick, was helping me get into college. So I got 4 years of a lot of my tuition paid. So I got in and out in 4 years. Had a young family. Right after school, I would loan money for about a decade. Got my real estate license. Still have that active, but not really active with using it as a form of income other than referrals and friends and family. One of the things that we can talk a little bit about, which taught me early on, I think, which affected my belief system, was I worked at a fun park all through high school and all through college, and I worked in the games department. I was taught how to hustle, how to make value appear out of nothing and take your money, make you focus on this while this is going on. So I'm very, I think, attuned to manipulation, because while I was doing that, I was also getting a degree in psychology. So I was getting real world capitalistic education while I was getting a professional psychology and human communications. That's my degrees: communications, psychology, and organizational leadership. My work history, like I said, I loaned money, real estate, full time, went into recruiting, staffing, HR. I've always been in sales in some shape, fashion, or form. And I think most people are, they just don't realize it or how effective they are.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been working for a really long time too.
Well, yeah, I mean, since I was a kid, it was, I didn't want to be poor because that sucked. I knew what that was like. So I worked very hard to try and educate myself and change that. Some of the other things that people don't always know about me is my four-legged buddy. He's a rescue that my son brought home when he was a teenager. Is a therapy dog that I took to nursing home before pandemic. I learned a ton about people and what we go through at the end with that experience, and he's an amazing creature. I can literally juggle fire, and I've got axe throwing set up out in the backyard where I let out a little steam and like to goof off. So
that's how the hands happened. The axe throwing is that, yeah. Or actually,
no,
you could hold them. Couldn't you hold it in the hand that way, maybe, and throw it like a basketball shot?
I do have spikes that I throw. I mean, just straight steel spikes.
Never mind. I'll stop messing with you.
No, I get it. And to me, I think religious faith, as most people are going to use it, is emotional, mental masturbation. The way I look at it, my experience has taught me to look at how things are communicated, the behaviors and the way they're communicated, and look for the intent. It's not just always verbal or nonverbal; it's written, and people are emotional. That I think is more key than most of the things I talk about. There's language I use that Dale, I think, is appreciated. Stuff like language virus. It's a way to try and convey the idea and get a better understanding, because it's complex. It's not just one thing that makes people believe the way they believe. It's a culmination of several different things. So I think that's a good breakdown of who I am. I mean, family, I'm a father. My mom still believes. I've got some extended family that I love. They've got some young children, so it's great to see them starting to grow up. And, I talked about some of the things I've done in the past. What I'm doing now is I'm selling liquid biotech, symbiotic bacteria and fungus in liquid form, assists plants in gathering nitrogen, phosphorus, zinc, and many of the other nutrients. When you pull a plant out of the ground, there's clumps all around the root. That a lot of that's that bacteria and fungus, and it's a symbiotic relationship.
So you're
People
like
don't.
super hyped up soil amendments.
Yeah, it is. The story there is one of my buddies in college. He's been producing and providing this to industrial farmers, big ag for decades. And we're now trying to bring it to consumers in an easy use format. It's pet friendly, kid friendly, organic. We've got a peat moss soil alternative. So we're trying to help with climate change. That's something that when I started looking at what I wanted to do, it was an important factor for me. So, that's one of the reasons why I'm focusing on this right now.
That is related. You mentioned to us earlier today when we were chatting that that's direct correlation to like part of your life, like spending time on a farm. So this is something like it's integral into your life.
Yeah, at this age, I look at where I've been, and hindsight is 2020. But I look at society a lot too, and to me, one of the biggest changes that I've seen in my generation is the disconnection of people and their food sources. I mean, if people don't go to the grocery store or the gas station or wherever they go to get snacks or food, many people can't provide for themselves. So that's changed significantly since I was young. Try and pay attention to the world around me. Some of the products, like I said, they're going to be needed more because it helps the plants when they're stressed, and that's going to be the next phase of climate change that really puts humans to the test. Is when we struggle to grow enough food for everybody.
Let me ask you a question, BA. Just curious, because I know we do talk about the religion stuff a lot on here, and obviously it's part of your name, your hook, your handle. With all that you said, like with your background, and for lack of a better term, seemed like somewhat of a Renaissance man, Renaissance human, very well rounded. What makes it so that you do seem to be somewhat focused on, the things that we talk about on here? What puts that at the forefront for you of things that you think it's important to talk about?
Well, I think number one, it's the way of thinking. I think religion in and of itself, the idea of a creator God, it's just a bad idea, faulty premise. Because without special pleading, it's obviously junk logic. If everything requires a creator, then by that very statement, any creator needs a creator. And that creator needs a creator, and that creator, and that. And so you have to throw in special pleading and say, oh, but the creator that I say is required doesn't require a creator. Bullshit. You're pulling my putt here. So I'm an adult. I'm not a child. I was raised Protestant, evangelical. I've read the Bible. And when I got an education, I realized the psychology behind it. And when you step out of the mind control and thought control system, I think it becomes a lot easier to see it for what it really is. At its core, religion is thought and behavioral control. When you look at the bite model, why do they threaten you with hell? That's emotional manipulation. So much religion is just selling bullshit as the truth. And quite frankly, I'm fucking offended that it's given so much respect in our culture and society. Part of me looks at the world and where we're at now, and an interesting tidbit I heard today was the amount of biomass. So living creatures and just the amount of biomass that all living creatures on the planet, that are here, 100,000 years ago. Oh my gosh, we're huge through the roof. Humans alone are like 3 to 5 times the amount of biomass of all life. From 100,000 years ago. Now, 10,000 years ago, it was less than 100,000 because humans had killed a lot of them. But now, with humans and all livestock, we blow it out of the water. So there's more life now than there's ever been on this rock. And that's interesting to note. But I think how we live is where we've gone wrong. I think in our large cities, we see a lot of liberal governance, which is good and it makes sense because you've got such a diverse population. But because of capitalism, I think we're isolated based upon that income thing. And so we have a huge amount of behavioral sink that occurs, and it's just more obvious, I think, in the cities and more profound. I think we were meant to kind of live in communities of 30 to 120, 150, because that's what we evolved to be with mixing of those tribes. I think tribalism, minimal group paradigm are what is really driving humans to their own grave. We ignore facts, and religion advocates for that, both of those. I just see the amount of harm that it does, and it's amazing to me it's not more obvious to more people.
We can see the power and the manipulation aspect of religion, but sometimes I'm also like, well, why is religion still so it's still so effective? And I think it's because it does work. When you start manipulating someone at a very young age and they're not really given anything else to think on, and like you said, it wasn't until you were starting to get some education and you started to see like the discrepancies there that you started to like think for yourself and say, okay, wait a minute, something's wrong here.
Well, I mean, I had the questions right about the time I hit 12 or 13, that kind of age of reason where you really start to put word math together, right? And that's what I look for when I engage in a lot of people is I pay attention to the words they use because, like I said, God is all powerful, all knowing, and I've heard it literally conflated with everything. God is everywhere. What kind of bullshit is that? I mean,
So is Santa Claus.
yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. Virgins don't give birth. People don't come back from the dead after 3 days. I know atheists that have died and come back, and they're going to tell you the same thing I am. It's fairy tale bullshit. Pull your head out of your ass. I'm an adult. Don't try and gaslight me. When I was younger, you could tell me fairy tales, and I didn't understand enough about the world that I trusted those authority figures. And then I grew up. And so now it kind of offends my common sense. And people get offended that I'm offended. Well, I don't give a fuck because you're talking shit. You're making stuff up and acting like it's true. And
This is why we get along. How often do I say you're talking shit to people, and people get so upset with me? But I want to say something, and I think you probably mean the same thing because you can let me know whether you do or not. But to everyone, this is true for me, and I think it's true with someone like BA too. A lot of times when I say you're talking shit, people go, "No, I'm not." What I mean by that is that you're saying something that you can't back up. It's something that is not factually accurate. You don't have a way to prove it. It just means some people say, "Oh, I didn't say any bad words," or "I wasn't calling you names," and it's like, no, no, no. To me, talking shit is saying something, talking that is not worth shit. You're talking and your words mean nothing. So if you can't back something up, to me, that's talking shit. You're just saying something and it's just the words. So I just wanted to, I think that's kind of what you mean when you say talking
yeah,
shit, because people do take offense to that, but it's not calling them a piece of shit, which people kind of think maybe because of the word. It's just saying your words are worth nothing.
well, I appreciate you saying that, Dale, because that's the dynamics of language, right? So you kind of understood better maybe than others because you and I engage a lot and we use some of the same type of terminologies and ways. So yes, 100% that you're talking bullshit. It's nonsense. I can tell. I told somebody on Twitter, belief isn't really a choice. It's not. I mean, try and believe that there's monkeys dancing in your butthole that are going to fly out in 5 minutes. You can't really believe that, even if you try and make yourself. It's ridiculous. I mean, the flying spaghetti monster, that's exactly what it is. It's calling out the crazy bullshit. And the problem that we have is we have generational power structures and people that are already in power that don't want to release it. I mean, the Catholic Church owns how much land, they have guns protecting their money. but they don't have them protecting the kids, right? I mean, I had to explain in a free speech discussion, that they want everybody to be emotionally mature enough to have conversations where we don't have to have limitations on free speech. Well, that's great. That would be fucking awesome. But you know what we have? We have dipshits that walk into schools with guns and just start shooting randomly. All right, so that's not the fucking world we live in. All right, and I do get very passionate, and people think I'm angry. No, none of you motherfuckers have ever seen me angry. You've seen me passionate, and that's what it comes out. And I think part of that too, part that I left out is I've done a lot of different volunteer work over the years. Like I said, I juggle fire, so I've done that for Halloween events many different times. I've helped post-incarcerated women go through mock interviews, help them with their resumes. There's, like I said, the therapy dog. I coached and didn't get paid. I coached and got paid. Sports, baseball, and wrestling. So I've tried to give back and do the best I can for others with what I have. And I just see so many people that are so focused on them fucking selves and their imaginary fucking friend. They're more worried about this invisible motherfucker and what people think it says versus the people that are in pain standing right fucking next to them. So that's why I have a problem with religion. And I mean, I fucking called out the Catholic Church because one of the things that I found out recently that they like to do is say that the child, if it was over a certain age, the age of reason, that the devil can inhabit it, demons can inhabit that child, and then attack a man of God, one of the clergy, with sexual desire. And so they're victim blaming with fictional fucking bullshit. Yeah, that kind of makes me mad. But I'm passionate about it because I know it's not just fucking up that individual, it's fucking up our entire society. And then I've got someone online that wants to defend the Catholic Church when the church, it has been proven to try and cover that up. There's no morality in that religious organization in my eyes. And you can't kind of convince me otherwise. I think those organizations need to be dismantled. That those funds and resources used for the benefit of people and not just a select few assholes. I think about Robert Sapolsky, and he talks about anthropologically that and genetically. So schizophrenia is genetic, and there's milder versions of it. And so I think we've got a large portion of the population that needs serious mental health that are hiding within religion because they're accepted there. And it's culturally accepted to believe ridiculous bullshit without evidence, or it's not without evidence, it's dog shit evidence. They've got a 2,000-year-old comic book without any fucking pictures in it. And it's frustrating. So yes, I am frustrated when you guys hear me speak sometimes because I have young family members that I care about, and I think we're cooking ourselves in the world, and we're allowing the young to be manipulated with just bad ideology, bad ideas, and mind control. So fuck religion, all of them.
I just want to say too, when people hear that type of, because you said before, like, whether people hear anger or passion, you did say, and you say it clearly, like, and a lot of people do take offense to this stuff when you say, God, you talked about God and you said, God is a motherfucker. And, just those words to someone can sting, but Yahweh was technically Jesus's motherfucker, right? So there it could be logically applicable. But in general, that term might hurt people's ears.
But that's what I'm talking about. That religious faith.
You were talking about Jesus?
Well, it's an emotional, mental masturbation. It's you talked bad about my imaginary friend, and that
I know
hurt
you
my feelings.
you were being serious and getting angry. I was trying to be light. See, anger.
I get it. No,
I know.
I'm making a fucking point, right? And that's when I use that language. That's what I'm doing. I want people's attitudes to change.
Well, there is too, and I'll agree with this. I use that harsh language, and people will say, "Oh, why do you need to use that language?" Well, the reason is because I want people to listen. And sometimes when you say things like "that piece of shit" or "motherfucker" or whatever that is, people's ears will spark up and they'll listen to what you're saying, unless you go like, "Well, this is something that you believe in, and I don't think it exists." You
Well,
know?
so one thing I'll point out here is I've spoken this whole time. None of what I've said has been directed at any one individual. I've attacked ideas. I haven't attacked a single individual. And so I've studied the psychology of that. I really had to study it when I saw that Trump was going to get elected. Social identity theory and minimal group paradigm are two great introductory ways to try and understand it. I've mentioned the Ash experiment and other psychological viewpoints to really kind of understand people's behaviors on an individual level and on a larger scale to make sense of the world that we live in, because that's what we're all trying to do, right? Is make sense of the world around us.
And and one nice thing that's happening now in this space is that you have the opportunity here that you're speaking about things that not necessarily is your focus, what people might read every day on Twitter. Like you're giving us an insight to things that you're active in, other things that you've volunteered with, and just being a humanitarian in general. So, I mean, those things to me give like a really broader perspective on who you are as a human being. It also is showing, like you're saying, you're not this angry person all the time. Like you are out there trying to make a difference in people's lives, even if it's just in small ways, great or small. You are being a good human.
Well, I've had
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Zaylen. I appreciate you guys, because that's what you're doing here, is giving people a platform that is a safe space. I remember you talking about it early on, that's what you want to kind of do. And so, as Dale mentioned, I've done a couple of podcasts where I've done a deconversion story. I've talked about certain topics. I've got my opinion on a certain couple of things, and some I'm more solidified in what I understand versus others, and I'll defer when I don't. I don't know everything. Dale said I was kind of the Renaissance man. I've been called that. I've been called a polymath. I don't like to be wrong. I learned very early on there were some heavy consequences if I was wrong, because I didn't have a very good support system. So I learned that being incorrect could be very costly. So that drive to not be incorrect taught me to learn, and that was a critical component. I mean, the same time I was being taken to the church, I was being taken to the library, and so I studied a lot of Greek and Roman mythology, and that's the key. Why is that mythology and not religion? No, it's because people are dead. Well, Christianity at some point in time will be called a mythology, because that's exactly what it is.
One of my personal biggest learning moments was that I took an elective class in high school that was a ancient mythologies class. And my teacher, you may have even heard this, I've told a few people, my teacher was like a gym teacher. And it was one of those things where they throw you a thing and say, "Hey, teach these kids about this." And he didn't know anything about it. So he was learning with us. So he was open to us. He goes, "Hey guys, I don't know shit about this." Like it was back in the day, He goes, "So we're gonna read this book, and this is about this guy Zeus, and and we, like, not just Zeus, but like we literally went through like Siddhartha, and like we went through. I remember all these different, what you would consider ancient mythologies, and I'll never remember anything. I mean, like this moment like hit me in the back of my mind maybe like a few months ago, and it clicked, and it went, I didn't remember this my whole life. However, that was the most enjoyable class I'd ever had. So I'm sure it has something to do with where I'm at. He, the teacher, genuinely enjoyed learning with us, which made me enjoy learning, because he was like, "Oh, this is interesting. Let's have fun," instead of like, "Here's what you have to learn, kids." And then I remember thinking, wait a minute, if they believed these were true, and people believe these are true, and that's when I started my comparing different religions and belief systems. So it's like the more you do learn what's out there, the more it makes the other things easier to question.
Dude, I remember being in sixth grade, and the principal was looking over the class, and it was free reading time because he didn't want to do anything. The teacher was out, and so I'm sitting there reading Christine, biggest book by far, and anybody in there. And he walks over and he asks, "What are you reading?" And I tell him, Stephen King, Christine. He gives me a dirty look and tells me I should be reading the Bible. I look at him, turn back, and keep reading, right? So I've had this stuff thrown at me since I can remember, and now I'm gonna call it for the bullshit I see it as. If you don't like it, prove it's true and win a fucking Nobel Prize. Have your God show up and speak for itself for once. I mean, I it didn't start out this way, my account, and none of this did, but it's what it became, and I'm glad for it. I've had ex-pastors tell me that I was part of the reason why they left. And now they see a lot of the things that I talk about. I help them to see a different perspective. So, I'm humbled by that. And if I don't, people, but that's not my purpose here either, because I have people you tell me I'm a bad atheist because I say this or I do that. Look, you're not the atheist police. My moniker is atheist bad, because people think that fucking word means something really bad. Well, fuck you. I'll be the bad cop. There's plenty of good atheists out there that you may like. I'll just be the bad one that made you remember that emotional sting, because that's all your God is. It's just emotion. When you've been in some of the discussions where we've gotten really deep into anthropology and human evolution, Dale, where we talk about the bicameral mind, the stoned ape theory, and when you look at what we've been and where we are, it's amazing. But if we don't get our asses under control soon, we may fuck ourselves.
I think you may be, in the words of Roger Clemens, misremembering something. I was never part of the ancient hominid talks that you're talking about, anthropologies or whatever that is. I was the stoned ape in the conversation.
Yeah, you were more listening at that point in time. I do agree.
And by the way, I am an ape, and it's okay.
So, I mean, that's a lot of who and what I am. I mean, I think a lot of people know another caveat that you mentioned that I'm not going to dive into too much, but I like to make people laugh. So that's another goal on Twitter, is to make people laugh. But my mom's still a believer, so if I can't convince her, I'm not really here to convince internet believing dipshits that their God isn't real.
Do you have a close relationship with her still, or is it kind of contentious? Or
No, I mean, my mom is kind. So my attitude when I evaluate, because we all judge. Some people say they don't judge; they're full of shit. We have to. That's how we survive in the world. So I learned early on that I need to judge. And so what am I going to judge people on? Number one, it's kindness. How do you treat me? How do you treat others? And how much empathy do you show? How much understanding? And so people that are very me focused and us versus them behavior, I don't get along with them. And people can see me as a bully towards those type of people, because I see their behavior as bullyish, and I'm trying to teach them not to do it. And from all of my experience, showing them that it sucks and then being their friend is the way to do it. You can't always get to that second part. So even if I'm not the one that becomes a friend, maybe somebody else will. But so with her, she's got mental health issues. She basically told me that she's not emotionally equipped to deal with the idea that the Christian God does not exist. So that just confirms again that it's an emotional blanket pacifier for people to not feel comfortable about.
Just the fact that you can even say that, like for somebody to say, well, I'm not emotionally equipped to deal with it. Like because in my mind goes, well, what does that matter? If it's true, if it's not true, it doesn't have anything to do with whether you're able to handle the news. But to some people it does.
Yeah, I think some of that is also because change is one of the hardest things to do. I mean, it's one of the biggest stressors in your life. It's up there with divorce and moving, and it's just and changing your thought process.
Yeah, BA knows this, and it goes with exactly what you said and what BA always talks about. But it's one of my favorite lines. Our brain, our mind loves homeostasis. It will do anything it can not to change. And so we have to make a conscious effort to fight against that. We can, we can fight against the evolutionary processes and things that have been embedded in us because of the process of evolution through natural selection. We don't have to abide by those things anymore, and that's kind of one of the things that losing religion can and should be. It's saying, yes, this has been part of us because we needed it to deal with the world, but we can move past that at this point.
Well, and I think for her and a lot of people, it's not being able to emotionally deal with the fact that, no, you're not going to go sit up on some fucking clouds with grandma and grandpa. Okay. This death means you're done. Okay. That energy is, it's like people thinking ghosts have clothes on. What the fuck? I mean, wouldn't they be butt ass naked, or would they have why would they have any body shape at all? Right. So, to me, it's just that, and it's all based upon emotion. They really haven't stopped to think about it, and it's evident in their arguments because they're fallacious arguments, because it's a fallacious premise. So when you start out with a faulty premise, you need a house of logical fallacy cards to hold it up, and it's pretty obvious because that was part of my education. Because I focus on the language side of things, that was my communication degree. I was able to avoid some of the math, but I got an education in what I call word math, logic, and really the psychology combined with it. I try not to lie to myself, and it makes it easier to not allow others to lie to me. Sorry, I'm getting text here. So you guys might hear the things.
You're good. And now you keep doing things, and I know it's not like shouldn't blame you because it's partially my fault, but now I can't stop picturing a bunch of naked ghosts running around shaking their stuff for people. Of course we let the ghosts wear clothes. We want them to feel comfortable around us. Come on, BA.
Well, I heard that if I was going to believe in ghosts, that every time you yawn, a ghost sticks its dick in your mouth, right?
I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm yawning. Give me a second. And that didn't work either.
BA, with that, I want to transition to opening up the stage for some questions from our listeners. Hi, Brian.
It's astounding to me how intelligent we can be as a species, but we're still stuck in this antiquated mythological past.
Hey, Brian. Yeah. Sorry, just to interrupt you for a second. Because we do have somebody else who wants to jump in and ask a question. Do you have any direct questions for BA before?
No, I just wanted to comment, and yeah, no, I think he's very entertaining. I love him.
Thanks so much, Brian.
Hi, my name is Betsy. Don't really have a specific question. I have been following you, so I don't know how often you've been doing these spaces, but I thought I would introduce myself and kind of, as you can say, my name is Desperately Seeking Synergy. I'm not always in a position where I find a lot of like-minded people. I spend very little time. I am well educated in religion, but I've spent very little time trying to refute anyone else's. But it does make it harder just because there isn't this natural community. Sometimes I'm here to meet you all.
First of all, just from me directly, this is Infidel. Welcome, and Zaylen is my co-host, who's under OK Atheist right now. So from both of us, welcome. If that's kind of like what you're hinting at, is kind of our intent. It's what Zaylen's vision was with what we're doing with OK Atheist. There's just so few places, resources for people who have left religion and are looking for like minds, people to understand their stories, even if it's just somewhere to feel like you're not the oddball, and in a lot of the world we still are, because you don't believe in imaginary monsters and stuff, which really shouldn't make you the oddball, but in a lot of ways, with our society it does. So welcome, thank you. You're always welcome to just come, listen or speak or whatever. But we're trying to get out there and do this a little more. It just means a lot. Like, I think if you heard BA speaking, for our guests and for our listeners, a lot of us don't have places to go where we have like minds. So exactly what you're saying is exactly what we want and why we're here.
One of the reasons why I really want to say thank you guys for having me on here, because when I talk about people calling me the bad atheist, because my approach may not convince religious believers that their stuff is ridiculous bullshit, more of my focus has been trying to find the people that are struggling with some of the bullshit trauma that they're having to overcome, and processing through that, because I've been there, I've done it. And so if I can help someone process it after they've already flipped the switch and really see more and process through some of that experience, then I'm here if somebody wants to talk.
I think the very first spaces that Infidel and I held was back in late July. It wasn't recorded initially, but we initially just were kind of trying to figure out what we wanted to do with the space. But I knew that there were people out there that lost their community either through deconverting from their religion, or if they were just already a longstanding atheist or agnostic or what have you, and were just looking for connections with others. So thank you so much. And we also have a Discord. If you are familiar with that platform, you can join that. And there's also a Mastodon page as well. But thanks again. Next, we have Adriana.
Yeah, hi everybody. I just had a really quick question. So you were mentioning how these types of beliefs in a god and a type of destiny are rooted more on the emotional side. How do you personally deal with grief, with loss? I'd really appreciate hearing just how you deal with those type of life events.
I actually just had a friend, like I said, I'm in the Midwest in the U.S., but I worked for an international company in the past, and I have a friend in Canada that just lost her mom and her dad. And so she reached out to me today, and, she's got younger children, but old enough that she had to kind of explain it to them. Yeah, it was heartbreaking for her. So, number one, I kind of, told her I sympathized, that I was so sorry, showed her as much empathy as I could. And then I recommended that she focus moving forward, that, she's looking for a new job. So she's got some interviews lined up, and it's going to be hard for her to stay focused during this time. So compartmentalize and focus on what you need to focus on at that time frame. But I told her to make sure to take time to take breaks from anyone and everything, because she's going to need some alone time to process that. She's going to need those breaks over the next couple weeks, months, however long it takes for her to really process the emotions that she's going to be experiencing. And one of the biggest things that I recommended for her during that time is your mind's going to go back to memories a lot in the past, because those people are not going to be in that future, and you realize that. So when you go back to those past memories, I think it's really, really important to focus on positive memories, memories of love and experiences that were positive for you and them. And I told her that, those people that she lost are going to live on through her kids, and, to share those memories with her kids would be a good way to probably do it when she's ready. So, she talked about, she sees things all the time that already remind her. And so I think staying positive and focusing on the positive, because they knew that they weren't well, but they went fairly close to each other. So it was not totally unexpected, but it's still tough to deal with. And it's easy to remember the last moments, which may not always be the best. So, I think when we're young, we think we're invulnerable, and we pay for some of those mistakes when we're older. I'm not saying they're responsible for any of that, but, just understanding our vulnerabilities emotionally, especially those we care about. We've got to take care of ourselves, because if she doesn't effectively take care of herself, she's not going to be able to do it for her kids. So, that would be my recommendation. I try not to put any magic bullshit in it. I try and look at it from that emotional standpoint and the psychological standpoint.
Hey, Betsy, did you want to jump back in, and then Brian, you can go next?
Yeah, I had read recently, actually, I think it was a Unitarian Universalist atheist writing an article about trying to kind of give comfort to someone who had just lost something. Her name was Sally Fritsch, Fritsche. And I don't know if you're familiar with her, but I like what she has to say, and it might be of comfort to somebody who just lost someone.
Thank you for that. Brian, do you want to go ahead and jump in?
Yes,
Yeah, or whatever you'd like.
I can totally identify with what OK Atheist is saying about. I mean, excuse me, Bad Atheist saying about how atheists deal with death, and this hits very close to home to me because I had the misfortune of watching my mom, my adopted mom, take her last breath in a nursing home. And I went into a deep depression for two months, almost 3 months, and I was suicidal. And I was playing that blame game, like if I had said this or I'd done that, or if I'd taken care of my mom this. And the truth is, she made her own choices, and I couldn't stop her from that ultimately. So I had done nothing wrong, but the guilt's still there because you love them and you want them to hang on. So it's a hard, death is always a hard thing to deal with. But I just wanted to mention the one thing that always irritates me, and it's a double standard, and maybe Bad Atheist, you want to comment on this, is we're always expected at weddings and funerals to keep our mouths shut. Do you know what happened to me when my mom died? I let out a huge scream. The whole hall could hear me. And then a bunch of people, staff, rushed in, pulled me out, and they took me into a conference room. And it was nothing but God talk. She's in a better place. She's this, she's that. And don't get, my mom was a Catholic. I didn't, during her decline, I didn't say, you're not going to go anywhere. I didn't say any of that shit. I let her have her religion. I let the priest come in and give her last rites and all of that. Okay, I didn't say anything. But that was my moment and my pain. And all of these people would not put up with me saying, she's not anywhere. Or, hey, I'm an atheist. I don't appreciate you saying that to me, trying to comfort. I don't mind you comforting me, but I don't want to hear that right now. I couldn't say that. I had to wait until I got home and talk to my friends, other atheists, so that I could be myself and say myself. But death is something we all have to face at some point, whether it's somebody else or ourselves. And I'm interested to ask Bad Atheist how he feels about that double standard.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry for you losing your mom, and I'm sorry you had to experience that during your grief. I mean, I fully can kind of put myself in that type of situation and understand what you were going through. Not fully, but I sympathize with you. No, our culture is embedded with religion. And I see that. It's just tied into our language, our idiocracies so much. I mean, people have this idea of heaven when you use that word. And so it's become part of our existence in a cultural, social setting. And, I tell the story of the last high school graduation I went to for one of my nieces, had 3 different prayers, all to the same Christian God, one of them by the local sheriff. And when you walk by all the law enforcement vehicles, they've got that extra "In God We Trust" stickers all over those things. So it's about authority. It's about that emotion that you have to bow down. And yeah, one of the things that you see my account do is totally dismiss the idea that religion deserves any type of formal respect from society. If I try and convey anything with this account on a large scale, it's to make people laugh and to really dismiss the idea that you have to bow down and respect that fucking religion. When it comes to death, yeah, I've lost people I love. They're no longer in pain, some of them, so I'm glad they're no longer suffering. My own death, I'm not afraid of it. I know what's going to happen. If I can control how it occurs, if I need to, I will. It's emotion. That's the hook. They sell that afterlife, which is fucking death. There's no afterlife is death.
There's the language virus you were talking about that I love pointing out that you always say.
Yeah, I
After,
mean, it's
like, wait, hold on. After life, because I did this on a podcast once, and it was like two of us doing it, and it wound up being so funny. But after life, what comes after life? After life is death. So we don't need a term called afterlife. We have a term for that. It's called death.
well, yeah, and that's what I mean when I say that I'm an atheist. If you look that term up, it means that you don't consider the God discussion a debate. You haven't clearly defined what you're talking about, not coherently. The terms are contradictory and conflation. It's the word math that I was taught. You're talking bullshit.
Okay, so I was just curious. You think death is final, but at our core, we're pretty much electromagnetic energy, right? And from what I understand, that energy can never die, it can only go somewhere else. So, isn't that
Well, if you're
possible that
if
we
you're
just
speaking
go
if you're
out into
speak
the universe and reconnect with other energy out there? And
well
some people call it
if you're
God, but it's really just universal forces, which is what we all are, and we all want to
well if you're
coalesce
speaking to
with
me
all the
just
time.
if you're speaking to me just because that's what I just said, um, when you say, like, that we are energy, and we are, that we go on to something else. When I say we are dead after life, I mean our life, the human body that we are, our mind. Infidel Dale will no longer be. The energy that made me will, but that's got nothing to do with what we call me or myself or I. So that's what I was saying. I wasn't saying
Okay.
that energy goes away. I'm just saying that me, Dale, my brain, my mind, the thing that everybody who knows me considers me,
Your human
will
body.
be gone.
Yeah.
No, my everything,
Yeah.
me.
Well, yeah, the way I would probably, Dale hits on it pretty well. I'm going to agree with what Dale says, but I'm going to say consider that this conscious part, the term we use is conscious,
Mm-hmm.
that comes with its own ideas in your head that may be different than mine. Okay,
Yes.
because we're trying to convey ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but the conscious part of the universe that is me, that's aware of the universe around me. I'm more of an energy processing machine. Without food and water, without all that energy that we're putting in every day, that machine's going to break down. You're constantly putting energy in there to keep this energy going. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, but other things eat us, whether it's bacteria, fungus, or whatever. Yeah, that energy, is changed or altered, and what I am no longer exists. Life energy is different than most other forms of energy, but most forms of energy are different from each other, right? So, no, again, I think who I am and what I am is done because the brain, a little bit, let's go into epigenetics a little bit. And it talks about epigenetics, talks about how the environment can trigger genetics. And so, one example that can be used is if you put an infant in total darkness during the womb, during delivery, during the first 10 to 12 years of its life, finally introduce them to light, they're going to be impaired because during that critical stage of development and growth, they did not have the external stimulus that was needed for those muscles, those neurons, those brain connectivity to really explore and grow. And so they may not lose all their eyesight, but they're going to be hindered in a lot of ways because a certain time frame has passed that was critical to development. Again, without that physical matter for those electrical impulses to go through, you're not you. So there's been many examples of brain injuries that changed personalities because there was damage to the brain. So what makes me is this meat sack and the whole system.
That's another good
Yes.
time to bring up that book if you want, just because I really do think it's a good thing to Bicameral Mind to Julian Jaynes.
Yeah, he brought it up. So I mean,
No. I was just saying it because I know we've talked about that a few times, and it's when we're talking about this subject, it's always a good, I don't want to say starter, but like a good just outliner of outline of the kind of things we're talking about.
yeah, the whole idea of consciousness, how it developed, and the physical, so to break it down in very simplistic terms, we've got two hemispheres, right? And so, parts of the functions of that meat sack up there were to do different things. And so I'll go as far to say that early man, is it kind of hears an internal voice from one side of the hemisphere to the other. And, oh, well, some of us understand, well, that's kind of thinking inside my head. And others are like, oh, I hear this fucking God, right?
Well, and we also know, right, BA, that we can cut that off at the corpus callosum, which attaches the two hemispheres, and then they no longer have that. And we can, I mean, this is a more in-depth thing, but at that point, during an interview with the left and right hemisphere, you will have an atheist and a believer inside of one brain.
Well, I guess it's really the challenging part about your belief is separating the consciousness of your human identity from your spirit or your energy field that never dies.
Wait, well,
It's hard to take the ego out of that.
Yeah, but I think
Well, that was a good point. The last point I get. It is hard to take the ego out when we're looking at it.
Yeah, the ego's in thinking that energy still remains in that form, shape, or whatever at all.
Well, I'm not sure where you're if you're atheist or agnostic or what, but me personally, and this is Zaylen, I don't believe in spirituality at all. So I'm kind of perplexed by what you're trying to say. I believe when you die, you die. But I also agree with BA that yes, your body is other bacteria and fungi and whatnot, and they will absorb that energy. I can understand that from a biological perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're inferring like supernatural or that's
no, I'm just talking about energy that's all around us all the time. I mean, it's.
Oh, I'm gonna wait to vibrate until after the spaces.
But you know what? That brings up a good point, and we don't don't have to, and won't go there now. But it brings up a good point to BA. We've said this before when we've talked defining your terms. It's in the old Voltaire thing. When you're going to have any discussion about deep things like this, and you're speaking about either terms like spirituality or faith or belief, you almost have to define those terms for each individual because we do look at them and think of them and use them even colloquially differently. So, like you said, when Zaylen said, well, I don't really know what you mean by spirituality or spirit, or, well, that would be the kind of thing that two individuals or a group would have to have a discussion about before they talked about how they feel about it.
Well, and we based upon my knowledge of communication, we won't still see it the same way, but we're going to have a more close and a more accurate similarity between our understandings.
A better understanding of where someone else is coming from.
If I'm going to give anybody advice, a lot of the times it's to understand logic and logical fallacies, because when you look at psychology, they're prominent in our society, and we are bombarded with it on a regular basis. And so when you can identify them, it makes it a little bit easier to run through the grass, so to say, and find out what's a little more accurate and what's not. Overgeneralization is probably one of the top ones, and that's the root of bigotry. Well, all of these people do this. No, they fucking don't. Okay, but when we're kids, you're riding in the car, you're going somewhere, and kid sees the horse for the first time and says, "Look, mommy, look at the doggy." Well, they have never seen a horse. They have no idea what it is, but they, by reference, know what a dog is. And so we use the similarities of the world around us to understand things.
Maybe
right?
maybe the kid said donkey because it doesn't look like a donkey.
Okay, well, I just wanted you to know that I don't ascribe to any faith. I do agree with you that the early writers of the Bible edited it to oppress humanity for thousands of years, and that it's warped a lot of people's minds because they're born thinking they're bad, and they're taught to feel ashamed. And I understand all that, and I don't appreciate it, but
There's nothing worse to me than what you just said, the concept of original sin. You're born and you're already a sinner.
Yeah, I do. like the compassionate teachings of a lot of religions, but I don't ascribe to any one of them. And if there's anything negative about them, I wouldn't ascribe to that. I just think like do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I mean, those are just life guidelines for a better life and how to be, to be loving and compassionate. But I'll just go into hell if you don't get saved. And I went to a wedding last December, and it was a Catholic wedding. And one of the sisters of the groom read two passages, and they were selected by the bride and groom. And to my great shock, one of the passages was that this like 24-year-old girl read aloud to a whole congregation was, "Woman, you must submit to your husband." I'm like, what? And she's a modern woman, and she believes that shit.
Yeah, I get it. Christian for a really long time, but I also want to say, like, I understand where you're coming from with you like hearing some of the stories or some of the verbiage that you agree with, but in general, I mean, we don't even really need to have that without just saying, "Hey, I just want to be a good person," and you don't need a religion to accomplish.
Right, exactly. Yeah. The wisest people gather knowledge wherever it is, and then they assimilate it to their logic, so the more you
Actually,
know,
the
the
wisest
better.
people, the wisest people get all of their knowledge from Wikipedia and YouTube.
I just
Thank
wanted
you,
you to know
thank you,
my
though.
position.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us,
Oh,
sharing,
yeah, my
and
pleasure.
also, and I mean this, explaining your position a little bit because, like we just said, if we don't know who somebody is or where they're coming from, it makes it a little easier to communicate with everybody because we're all a little different. We
Yep.
don't have an exact view, and it's one of the things about the secular community. Whether somebody says atheist or, like Zaylen said, some people prefer the term agnostic. I won't get into that. Or all different types of secular, humanist, whatever you want to call yourself. We don't have a set of rules, or we don't have you have to be this, you have to be that. So even more so for us, a lot of Christians, I think they'll assume when we start talking, well, they believe in Jesus, they think you have to do this or you go to heaven or hell, or basics, but we don't have any of that. So
Right.
even more so for people who aren't believers of a religion.
And yeah, and actually here is a good place to do that because, like we're saying, we all have different perspectives. So it's good to just kind of explain that a little bit too, because if you're talking about one thing and then before I was just completely thinking in like different way. And so I was just like, wait, what? This isn't making sense to me. So, and I know it's not easy to come up here and speak sometimes. So
Yeah.
for, just talking with us, I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Likewise.
Yeah, Betsy, go ahead.
Sure. I think somebody else was saying something about it, but I guess I often say that, you know, I'm an adult. I've pretty much been a non-believer since I was maybe about 12 or so is when I kind of like think that I recognized it as as myself and what I believed. Um, Over the last couple of years, I was actually kind of isolated in religion by some people who I guess think I didn't know enough or wanted to teach me. And of course, I have some reactionary behavior because of that. But I think that's my problem is that a lot of people see me as, if I'm not picking one set of rules, they see me as a blank canvas to be painted on, and I'm like, no, I already have I already have my paints. I chose them. So I'm trying to at least choose my own paints. That's my struggle, I guess. And I did find one of the prayers from Sally, and I don't get the chance to say it to anybody else. So if you don't mind, I'll say it to you. But it's, may we release ourselves from the need to fit every truth neatly into our own language. May we occasionally forget ourselves long enough to remember each other.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was good. I actually had to think about it for a second.
Is what it goes back to. One of the things that I'm thinking of as you guys talk about it, and I touched on it. Growing up, I worked at a fun park, and I worked in the games department. So if you've ever watched the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin, he goes off on his own, and one of the first jobs he gets is working at a carnival, and he works on what the game is called the scale. Guess your age, your weight, the month of your birthday. 3 pounds, 2 months, or 2 years. And so at 15 years old, I was handed a microphone and told to ask the public to play this game. There's a lot of ways to kind of manipulate people, and that's what I was taught. And so I've become, I think, very attuned to manipulation when it occurs and when other people are trying to perform it, and whether they know that's what they're doing or not. So, I think that's what I think a lot of people are missing because it's everywhere in our society.
So, BA, I have a question for you. There obviously have been a lot of changes in Twitter in the past few weeks, and I know that has affected how we see our information, the kind of accounts that are popping up and things that are being posted. For you personally, what's your future on Twitter? Are you staying here? Are you exploring other options?
Great question, Zaylen. I appreciate it. Probably stay here until it crashes or burns, or it becomes a total cesspool and provides no value. I've met a lot of friends here, but I've also lost friends that were on here already too. Either some of them have passed, or I no longer see them. So, I've enjoyed my friends. Some people know how to contact me outside of here. If I make that type of connection with you, great. I've met people from Twitter in real life, but I've also done the same thing. I do Xbox gaming and have for 20 years, and I'm good friends with some people that I met through that as well. So, I'll be honest, I spend less time on here now, and I may spend less time in the future because I am gonna, work on. Right now, it's winter. It's not really big for growing products. So as spring comes up, I'll be spending a lot more time trying to get those organic liquid biologics out to people.
Thinking about the product that you're selling, is that going to be found in stores eventually?
Yeah, that's a big part of my role is getting it out to retailers.
Hey, BA, I just want to throw this in, and I know it's while we're on this because we will speak afterward at some point, but you have no idea how much we can talk about this subject. I don't think you do. It's something I've been a big part of for a while.
I know you were kind of in that industry. I don't know all of it, so yeah, we should talk offline some because again, I see the needs going to increase for this type of stuff. No chemicals. It's kid friendly. It's pet friendly. What it is basically isolating those bacteria and fungus and growing them and really providing it to the plants because what we've done is eliminated a lot of them in the soils by how we treat the soil. So, and I know you understand a lot of that. Mycelium is a fantastic thing. I will just say that, like I said,
I can test and adjust pH levels in soil and etc. Yeah, I actually it's something I've done for a while, and I'll be very interested to hear more about it.
Perfect. So, like I said, if anybody else is interested, I'm not here to just be an advertising plug, but we are bringing it to consumers is what we're doing. So, if you're interested early on, you can try it out, run some experiments yourself. You'll see the effect of it. It's amazing stuff. So, I've seen it work for decades, and over time, it's been refined to find the best strains and because evolution occurs during that time and bacteria moves at a quick speed. So, but there's organic fertilizer. We've got a peat moss alternative for soil. And I don't know how much people know about peat moss and the effect of harvesting that has on the environment. But there's a lot of different factors. And like I said, climate change is becoming something almost more important to me than religion because I see where we're headed. This account became popular because I think people found me funny when I was calling the bullshit that is religion. I think it's a little harder to get people into action on climate change, but I'm going to do what I can.
That's so fantastic.
I want to tell a quick story because I know we're about to close up, but I just have a quick story on this exact topic that is kind of very me. So long story short, when I first moved out on my own, when I first lived in a house on my own, because I'd lived in apartments and et cetera for a while, but I was in my mid-20s, or mid-20s. And I lived in a house by myself, so I had to take on all of this, yard work and et cetera that I never had. And I had the people who had lived there before had gardens, but it all had overgrown. And I was like, all right, what do I do with this? So I just kind of started out seeing what I could do, playing around with it. But I started kind of caring about it. And I'll never forget a phone conversation that I had with my mother. The first time I grew a vegetable out of my garden. I don't even remember what it was. It was, whether it was cucumbers or tomatoes or whatever, but the first vegetable I took out of my own garden. I called her and I went, wait a minute, like, it's all connecting now. The food that we get at the grocery store, people grow that in the ground and then they ship it somewhere and then we just buy it. But like, I did what they do. Mom, I'm a fucking farmer. Like I was, and she laughed at that for years because like I wasn't trying to be funny, but I was so excited. Like that's what the fuck a farmer does. They grow food in the ground. For being like a city boy my whole life, it was amazing to me that food actually came out of the ground.
Again, I appreciate BA coming on here today to chat with us on a little more personal level and actually just getting a chance to chat with you and ask you questions that we can't necessarily glean just from reading a Twitter account. So thank you again.
No, I appreciate you guys having me, Zaylen, and I wish you guys the best of luck. If I can be on future spaces, I will. The whole Twitter thing, it may implode, it may go on and become great and even bigger and better, but we'll have to see how it goes. But I think
you were a wonderful guest, but you're not a two-time worthy guest.
No, I knew
Ooh.
that, but I knew you guys were going to be disappointed before I even did the spaces. So you're not surprising me, Dale.
We got through almost the entire thing without me mentioning the BS.
Yeah, I know. I wasn't going to bring it up.
Wait, what?
Well, BA and I often BS, but I use that term because he has a little thing for, and when I mean for, I mean fear of Brussels sprouts.
It's not a fear. It's not fear. It's fucking disgust. It's loathing. It's disgust. It is, and I don't call them by the fucking gaslighting bullshit name that implies they're edible. I did a survey and everybody agreed that cabbage turds is the most appropriate name. Now I mean I know that you guys fucking just harvest little butt nuggets from Oscar the Grouch's can and eat them, but that doesn't mean I have to. And I use the humor of that little scenario to make a few points. Pure opinion, it's my opinion. You can eat them, but don't touch me with them because that will incite violence. You do you as long as it don't fucking hurt me and we're good. But I
literally said 2 letters. Look at them go.
Yeah, everyone, you've been warned, and you heard this only here. So remember, you get the best news right here. Anyhow, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. And thank you all for joining us and listening in. I've posted our Discord channel that is free to join, and you can continue the conversations there. And thanks again for joining us. Please follow Infidel, follow BA, and follow the OK Atheist account.
You really gonna end it with the cabbage turd nonsense?
And
I
no,
don't think I didn't see that.
I'm going to say one more line. And always follow your heart. And when I mean follow your heart, I mean follow your mind because your heart doesn't think.
All right. Good night, everyone. See you next week.